Hi, this is Tasheena.
And this is Jonathan.
And this is We Watch What We Watch, a podcast where a married couple come together to talk about movie and TV.
All right, and today we have two new movies for you, Cuckoo and Alien Romulus. So we're going to start with Cuckoo. A 17-year-old girl is forced to move with her family to a resort where things are not what they seem. The end.
Wow.
That's the shortest one yet.
After watching it, I can understand why it's vague. It's just, that's a very short summary. I guess it's correct, since it gave you nothing.
Technically correct.
So I did try to find something on Letterboxd that spoke to me, but honestly, even though I agreed with a lot of opinions, nothing really spoke to me. So I did my own pull quote, and that is, my head hurts.
Oh no, another one of these.
I kind of hid from Jonathan some of my anger from this movie.
Okay.
I think all I said to you was, meh, which is true. It is probably just comes down to meh. But my anger is more with a general trend that I'm seeing with modern horror movies. So before we get into the specifics of Cuckoo, just kind of want to explain how I feel about general horror modern movies.
Go for it.
Because I'm feeling a lot of frustration. After every horror movie I come out of, something's either not clicking with me. So I reflected on this year, and I've noticed a trend of each movie starts off pretty strong, has great actors, solid premise, and, some the range on the visuals, but most of the time they're pretty solid visuals too. And somewhere halfway between the movie, the plot is lost. And we just kind of go more into the tropes that are really popular now. And then it leads to an ending that is nonsensical. That happened with Maxine. I think Maxine was definitely the worst offender. Long Legs and now Cuckoo. I know we talk a lot that visuals are important, and they are. But visuals are supported by a strong story. So where I feel like a lot of Hollywood is having the issue of maybe having good stories, but visually being flat or dull or just CGI nonsense, I feel like horror movies are kind of actually at the opposite end. Where I feel like visually, sometimes it works, sometimes I'm into it, but for some reason, story building, script, it's almost being left behind. And I'm not sure what it is. There's a part of me that's like, okay, are they trying to make it too complicated? Because everything's kind of been done. So the only way to give it a freshness is to try something new. So it makes probably more simple concepts way more complicated than they should be. Or maybe they just don't care. And they're like, oh, it's just about the visuals. And it's like, yeah, visuals are important, but their meaning comes from the story.
Right.
If you just have visuals with no story, then it's empty. It's just empty.
Yeah, I think we've said it before that a movie is very different from all these other mediums in that it is the, synergy of visual storytelling, audio storytelling, written storytelling, acting, performance storytelling. And anytime you have a movie that fails in one of those aspects, it's always going to be lacking something.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, like you said, we've complained about the movies that are just being shot so boring and so flat. And I wonder if that has anything to do with obviously A24 really started to make these vibe movies popular, and they really showed what you could do with hey, you can apply this visual storytelling craft to horror, which was typically very schlocky. And in an attempt to copy that and ride the wave,
yeah,
it does seem like many things are getting greenlit that are sold solely on that look and that vibe, when it is a story that would normally have never made it because there wasn't enough there.
Yes. And the thing is, if it was just vibes alone, I've had movies where I just like the vibes and the atmosphere, but I feel like these movies think they're saying something. I'm like, what? What do you mean? Either it's just absolutely shallow, there isn't nothing there, or the way they explain it is so confusing I'm like, is there something there? Is there a ghost of something there? The execution of actually explaining your themes is a mess. And that is what Cuckoo is. I feel like, again, first half, I was really digging this. I love Hunter Schafer. She is an amazing final girl. She's also a great actress.
What else has she been in?
Mainly Euphoria, I think is.
Okay. Right. Yeah, we talked about
yes.
that, Euphoria. Stairway to Success.
Yes, and hopefully it will get better for her. Like, I feel this is definitely another step, hopefully in the right direction for her career, but she can do better than this. I think a lot of this movie was on her shoulders. And Dan Stevens, who, you know, no matter how fine a boy is, if you don't have a story, like, there's only so much he could do.
Yeah.
And he did great in this role. His wacky German accent, his mannerisms.
Isn't he actually German?
Is he?
Now I gotta check.
Oh, he's diving into it.
I thought all his other accents were his not. Or...
Well, I know he's English because he's in Downton Abbey.
You know he's English because he's in Downton Abbey. Oh no, yeah. For some reason I thought he was German. No, yeah, he's totally.
No, that's how I know who is
English.
who are English actors, Jonathan, is if they were in Harry Potter or Downton Abbey. If you're one that's
I don't know. They could go across the pond.
Can they?
Yeah, and he is English. Okay.
The accent was accenting.
Okay. Yeah,
but it was fun. It was fun.
Which was the same thing in Abigail.
Yes, that's right. He had a wacky accent in Abigail,
He's actually from Queens. Is he, though? Is he? You sure about that? I think he's pretending he's from Queens.
And I'm just like sitting there going, he's a delight. So I enjoyed them. I love the location. It's the Alps. Great location. The setup's really good. Also, with Hunter Schafer and her character, she has to move with her family because her mom has just passed away. So you're already kind of on board with her. She's going through so much change. Also, dad is a dipshit. I could not stand him. And she has a half-sister. And you could tell just like the relationship between her stepmom, and her half-sister, all of it is just very contentious. And I don't think the parents want her there. So, solid setup. And again, about halfway through, there is a series of exposition dumps. And instead of clarifying,
You don't want exposition dumps in a vibe movie.
Exactly. Get that shit out. If this is a vibes movie, I don't need all this exposition. Honestly, probably just a couple of lines would have been fine and probably would have been more helpful because the way the exposition was executed, it made it more confusing.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, huh? Like, it made me feel stupid. I'm like, I don't think I'm a dumb person. Am I not getting this? Like,
I can vouch.
So that was deeply frustrating because first I'm like, is this just a style over substance movie? I don't think so. I do think there's substance there. It's just the way it's being conveyed I didn't like. Like things that I realized at the end were important to establishing a certain relationship in the movie, which is really key to the third act. I didn't realize it was a part of that relationship, and I didn't understand. It was a message on a voicemail machine. I didn't understand who it was from because it went by so quick. I'm like, I didn't catch the name. So I think because I missed out on that context when the turn happens in the third act, I was like, eh? Like question marks around my head is probably what it looked like. But because Hunter Schafer is so good, she sold it. Not the script. The script didn't help her. She sold it by herself. And she pulled that third act emotionally on her shoulders. Between her pulling everything emotionally and Dan Stevens having a good time, those were pretty much the highlights of the movie. Other than that, it is like every other horror movie we've gotten. Whether it's Neon, A24, I feel like all of them are kind of all doing a similar vibe, similar style. And they're all, oh my goodness. I think what the most upsetting thing is, especially post-COVID, so much trauma and grief. It's all about trauma and grief. Like everybody just took a mental health class.
Mm-hmm. It's like when everyone discovered that the word gaslighting existed.
Oh, yes. And so maybe like the first couple movies were solid, but then it keeps going. It keeps going. We keep getting more movies that are about trauma. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. It's almost like they think they're doing some groundbreaking work with the subject matter. Thing is, just because we are more attuned to mental health and probably have more words, descriptions for certain things that are happening in our mind, maybe we didn't have before, that doesn't mean we've ignored mental health before millennials came around. Like, I've seen so many movies, especially the 70s. If you want good movies, especially horror movies about like grief and trauma, go back to the 70s. Recently, I just saw Don't Look Now with Donald Sutherland, and it's about losing a young child and dealing with that. And the whole movie is about dealing with that. And it's heart-wrenching at the beginning. And there's certain images in my mind that stay from that movie. And I think that's what I'm missing. There is nothing that's going to really stick with me. I feel like all these horror movies I'll watch, that was fine. They'll pass over me. But I don't know if they don't have the longevity. They don't have it.
Feels like most of them are made expressly for a social media marketing campaign. And so long as that's successful, then you've got your enough to cover the budget.
Yeah, like a Long Legs. It has made like $90 million on a $10 million budget. And I think a lot of that is due to the smart marketing. And you're right. A lot of these feel like stuff that you could just easily throw up on social media and be like, ooh, that looks cool. That looks interesting. I'm not saying a movie can't have good moments like that, but a movie sticks with you because the continuous story in the movie with the visuals paired with it. That's what sticks with you, not one moment that you could just throw up on TikTok. It's just disappointing, especially as someone who loves horror so much. I want to be down. I want to love these movies so much because they're getting great performances out of people. And I feel bad for them because I'm like, it's in service of a meh story.
Yep. Do you want to talk spoilers or?
I don't know, because I don't even know if I fully understand what happened. So I think I would just make people more confused. So I will, if you want to go see it, I will let you discover, make up your own decisions. All I could tell you is it definitely has like a found family versus blood family theme to it.
Okay.
Which I thought that's compelling to me. But I didn't even realize that's what it was about till like the very end. And then afterwards, while I was trying to piece things together in my mind, I was talking to a friend about the movie and we're like, what did we just watch? Trying to piece together, like, is that what he was trying to say? Is there a message there? Is there substance?
Or did it gaslight you into thinking there was a message? Next subject. Can movies gaslight you?
You know what? Maybe. I'll have to dwell on that. So yeah, I don't know if I want to go into spoilers for this because honestly, there's not much else to it. So
Gotcha.
I mean, if you were loving the horror movies this year, then I would say give this a try. If you were kind of on the same bandwagon with me, where it's like, I'm not feeling really any of this, I sadly think it might be more of the same, especially since I watched this director's first movie. I think it's called Lulz, L-U-Z. It's on Shudder now. It's awesome. It is vibes, but compelling vibes. And I'm like, ooh, I want to know what's going on, but like in a good way, not like in a frustrated way, you know? And it's just unique as well. Like I felt there was a uniqueness to this. I think that's also why Cuckoo kind of made me a little sad, because I felt like this seemed way more mainstream than his last movie.
I think that's a problem with some of these directors who are used to, obviously this is still a small project, but there are many tiers of small indie projects, and this is on the upper echelon. This is someone trying to break in, you know, to a more mainstream indie, that's a thing,
Yeah.
appealed. And I think a
Your
lot of people,
A24s. Yeah.
yeah. And I think a lot of people make this mistake where they have a voice, they have a style, they have those skills, but they sort of get in their own way and get in their own head
Mm-hmm.
when trying to make these when trying to add mainstream appeal to their movies. They think, well, it has to say something. Like you were saying,
Yes.
oh, it has to say something. It has to do all these things. It has to have moments that I can put in the marketing or social media, like sound bites, visual bites, or market it with, and I have to have all these things, and we have to appeal to more wider audience. So I can't do that, and I think they just get in their own way.
Yeah, because the scariest bit in the movie was in the trailer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I saw that in the trailer. I'm like, oh, are we actually going to get a movie where I'm kind of scared? And not like, when I say scared, like as an adult, I know this is not real, but you could still get that unsettledness, that uneasiness that gives you goosebumps, where you're like, woo, and that moment happened and it's really effective. But after that, there's a couple moments that are creepy and stuff like that. But again, nothing that's going to last, nothing that's going to really stick with me, especially when at the end of the year, when I'm looking at the movies, like, okay, what really stuck with me? All these horror movies not making the cut.
What would you say is the last good horror movie you saw?
Like recent?
Yeah,
movie?
like has there been anything in the past year? What would you say is your favorite horror movie in the last year or two, if you can't think of one in the last year?
Honestly, I feel like the last couple of horror movies I really loved, maybe like one a year. I feel like I love. I think the last one, I know 2022 there was Resurrection, and I guess technically Crimes of the Future is horror, though I see it more sci-fi. Resurrection, though, was so deeply personal, and that's why it affected me. I also, in the 2020s, I also really liked Possessor, Cronenberg Jr.'s first film, and Censor, which was a smaller British horror movie. Yeah, not a ton. And I feel like I keep being drawn back to older horror movies. Because even campy, schlocky ones, I feel like were funner. I don't know. It's just like, Abigail was a lot of fun, though. I did enjoy that. But even then, I could feel some of the constraints of like the modern mainstream.
And also being like a horror comedy is a little bit different.
Yes.
Like now, so full disclosure, we were recording this before seeing Alien Romulus.
I'm so worried.
Yeah, it's getting sort of mixed reviews. Some people really like it.
Some people hate it. I'm like, oh no.
I'm just seeing where this falls, because that's a horror movie, right? Sci-fi
especially
horror.
This one. This looked like it's leaning way into horror because the director did the Evil Dead remake, and I definitely get that vibe. So this actually looks way more horror to me, like the original Alien, than sci-fi.
I think that's where some of the mixed reviews are coming from. Some people are like, "Oh, it's just a repeat of the first one." Some are, well, I like that it's returning to formula because we've had so many bad ones.
Yes.
So yeah, we'll have to see. Or else it'll be another day.
Yeah, we're seeing it tomorrow.
You all, it'll be merely moments.
All right. So I don't think I have any last thoughts. I think I said what I needed to say. I said my piece.
Cool. All right, teleporting to the future in 3, 2, 1. And we're back. Just watched Alien Romulus.
And how is the future treating you, Jonathan?
The future is amazing. You have flying cars now. Actually, no, I've seen drivers. We don't want that.
Yeah, actually, yeah. I think that would be the worst thing to have.
Growing up is realizing that we'll never have flying cars, but not because it's impossible. It's people are stupid. Speaking of which, Alien Romulus. While scavenging the deep ends of a derelict space station, a group of young space colonists come face to face with the most terrifying life form in the universe. Deepfakes.
Oh, man. We have so much stuff to get into for spoilers. Before we do that, let's try to give some general impressions, some positives, some negatives. We can leave the people.
Yeah. So going into this, we knew the reaction this was getting was mixed, right?
Hotly mixed.
Yeah. So we were pretty worried. We went in with low expectations.
Probably a good thing.
I've seen the last few Alien movies and some of the Predator movies, and boy, the bar is low. I was not expecting much. And I gotta say, I was actually surprised how much I liked this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the fact that it has at least 3 key flaws in it, 2.5. There are 2 big ones. There's one that's so big, it just, like a black hole, sucks in all of the reactions and the discourse and everything. And the other pretty major one, which relates to the first one, and then a third sort of minor one from my perspective.
Yeah, it's a pretty fatal flaw.
Yes.
Because I've only really seen Aliens, Prometheus, and then recently Alien versus Predator. So I haven't seen like half the sequels. So I definitely think that helped in my viewing experience. Because it sounds like it took from so many of the movies. So probably some of the egregious stuff didn't really fall on me because I had no reference from it. Only the movies that I saw. So that probably helped. Also, the last one being Alien versus Predator also probably helped my viewing experience.
The bar is low.
I have to say, with all the flaws, this is a beautiful, well-crafted movie.
Oh, yeah.
And very entertaining. The bones here are solid. But because, especially the back half, reads like a fan film more than a movie to me, I'm more sad because I really think this was a great setup. And I think we really could have gone somewhere solid with this and probably would have had a great sequel. And man, it just fumbled the ball. And it might be some on the director, but I have a feeling it's a lot on Disney, especially with the really egregious thing.
Yeah, the really bad one I feel like is mostly Disney. The rest of it, I think, especially given his comments on it, I think it is what he was going for.
Probably, yeah.
You can argue whether he succeeded in executing what he wanted to go for or not, but I think he clearly wanted to do a specific thing. So he shares some of the blame there.
True. No, yeah, he definitely shares some of the blame with the fan serviness of it all.
So full disclosure for me as well, I also, as far as the original series of Alien movies go, I also have only seen Alien and Aliens. I did not see 3 or Resurrection, which I think is different from 3.
I thought 3 Resurrection was the same, and recently I'm like, oh, they're 2 different sequels?
Yeah. So this movie has many, we'll generally call them callbacks and visual references to those movies. And obviously the Alien and the Aliens ones we caught on to.
Mm-hmm. And some Prometheus and Covenant was in there.
Yeah.
But because it's so different visually and it's not as much as like your through line of Alien movies, like those original ones. Because
I haven't seen those, I think, like you were saying, it didn't affect me as much because to me they seemed a little more original. It was only finding out after the fact that, these actually were.
I know. There's some
films.
Stuff in here. I'm like, oh, that's neat. And then afterwards, like, oh, that was from Resurrection. Okay.
Now, so that helped me enjoy it more.
Yes. In-theater experience.
Was great.
Yeah.
I think it is very interesting, though, that as someone who's only seen Alien and Aliens, I felt like I was still getting the fact that many of these things were called back to the Aliens formula. And then other people would point out, no, actually, that's a more specific callback to this thing in Resurrections. I'm like, you know what? I think it's kind of telling that the fact that you almost can't tell what the reference is, that speaks to what the Alien franchise is about.
It's a lot of regurgitation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think you could say regurgitation. I think you could also say that it's like, it's a very specific formula, and it's each director putting their own twist on it, right? You can only do so much.
So that's why...
Unless you're Ridley Scott and you just go... Pshoo!
You do... Yeah. Unless you do something completely different. The alien in a confined space, there's only so much you could do. So I think having callbacks, especially visually, is fine. I think it was mainly like lines... I hate line read callbacks.
Yeah, those
are
there
awful.
Were a couple specific ones which were pretty cringy. There was one specific one that I was just like, okay, no, you even made
even the actor seemed a little embarrassed to say it.
All this to say that I think the criticism of it's just a retread isn't entirely, I think, misses the mark a little bit. The Alien series as a rule feels like that's what you're supposed to do. Now, I think you can argue, well, did this do it the right way? But just to lay the groundwork, I think the series, as a series, that is the purpose of it, is to retread the same thing. So I would go into it with that mindset. They're like, this isn't some, oh, this one is so much worse than the other ones, because they've all been doing the same formula over and over and over again. So this is just keeping in line with that. But
I do think it's more nuanced.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why people are having such a bad reaction to it is the cameo. Before we go into that, one more positive. I want to shout out David Johnson as Andy.
Yes.
It's interesting because I mentioned this in the Cuckoo review, where it's like, great premise, great setup, great actors, and then somewhere in the midpoint, it just fumbles over itself. And honestly, I feel like this is the same thing. Now, I'm giving this a little bit more of a pass because I was entertained more than some of the other horror movies I saw. Like, I would probably maybe rewatch this again, other than some of the other movies I've seen this summer where I'm like, no, I would never revisit that.
Yeah.
But David Johnson, honestly, him alone is worth seeing. His performance is amazing.
Really is the anchor.
And so David Johnson plays an android that is with our main girl. And I guess he's damaged. Yeah, he's damaged because they found him in the trash.
Yeah.
So, and you could definitely tell by his mannerisms. There's some wires that are messed up. And there's something that happens to him where he switches, and that switch is masterfully done.
And without being over the top either.
Yeah.
So it could have gone really like...
very subtle.
Yeah.
It's all in the details. And it makes me more upset because I want him to have his moment. And it seems like a lot of people are giving him praise, even if they hated the movie. So I'm glad about that.
That's good.
I hope this helps his career. I was telling Jonathan the only other movie I've seen him in is Rylane last year, which was one of my favorite movies last year. And it's probably one of my favorite rom-coms in the past few years. Other than that, I think we're ready to move on.
Not quite yet.
Oh, we're not? I'm sorry.
Because what really got to me, and this is what carried me through the whole movie, was just how gorgeous it looks.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. The sci-fi tech in it is so cool. The 60s, 70s retro, because they really took what was in the first Alien movie and updated it without it feeling... They updated it while keeping the spirit and did this really cool blend of modern and retro, and it was just such a breath of fresh air, because I was telling Tasheena, I've just been so sick at a lot of modern sci-fi with the floaty panels tapping in the air. Everything's the same. The future always looks the same. It's so boring. I liked this so much. The cinematography was great. The shots in space, I loved it so much. I loved showing all the physics in space, all these big, wide, panning shots, beauty shots showing the ship and the planet and the rings, and I was eating it up. As soon as that stuff started playing, I'm just like, holy, I am so in. I don't care about the rest of this. And I would eat those words later, but I don't care about the rest of this. It's great.
I know. I love sci-fi horror as well. So I think all of that doubly is probably one of the reasons why I'm giving this such a pass, where other movies I haven't have the same problems and flaws.
And it did have those great horror set pieces and sequences.
I know. Especially in the back half.
Mm-hmm.
Ready for the spoilers. So if you haven't seen it, I honestly don't know whether I would recommend it or not. I think you just kind of have to know what you're going into.
Yeah. We guessed the cameo before going in.
Yeah.
So we had heard it was a deep fake of a deceased actor, and there was pretty much only one person.
I know, my God, I know.
And it would make sense to do it in universe. So spoilers. They go into this lab, and there's another android that has been cut in half by alien acid that has gone through the floor. And he's face down, so you don't see who it is at first. All covered in the milky stuff. And then after they encounter the aliens, they're like, we need more information. I know who'll know. And they flip him over and turn him on. And it's fucking Ian Holm, Science Officer Rook from Alien.
It's so bad.
In a Rogue One-esque deepfake nightmare.
Worse, because at least with Rogue One, I feel it was brief.
Yeah, the Admiral
Especially the Leia.
have a huge... Leia was definitely brief.
Brief, and I think she was definitely the worst.
I don't know. I thought that was a better one.
Oh, really? Maybe I just scrubbed it out of my brain. I don't know.
Because it was like one quick line and you're done.
Yeah.
You can...
He is a character. Like, he is a secondary... Yeah. This is more than a cameo.
Yeah, I was expecting it to be... okay, well, as soon as I'm like, okay, so he shows up, gives them some exposition of the aliens, and then he dies.
We're done. Yeah.
Okay, thank God. At least we can move past it. But he doesn't.
He keeps coming
back. He won't go away.
He is the scariest part of this movie.
He can't be killed.
He is the jump scare that keeps coming back. I'm like, ah! Oh, I just feel like Disney creeping in, going, we have this technology. We need to use it. Oh, you have an android in here that's supposed to give information. We have Ian Holmes' face. Like, oh, it was so gross. I hated it so much.
Considering the two most egregious uses of this technology so far have both been from Disney in these sci-fi properties, first with Rogue One and then here. There's probably other instances, but those are the ones that stick out in my mind of using these dead actors as actual roles.
Mm-hmm.
If this feels like a Disney decision to me.
Yep.
And I really thought it died with Rogue One. I thought that was so... Even the people liked it, I thought that was so panned that there's no way they would try again. Motherfuckers, they did it again.
Why did they try? They doubled down, and it is a good portion of the movie.
And they didn't get any better at their jobs.
Oh,
because it looks worse somehow. We would expect, like, hey, if you're going to do this, you at least got to make it look good.
I couldn't believe how bad it looked.
Maybe someone on the inside is trying to sabotage it.
So pretty much...
All right, guys, this is the best I can do. I guess we should stop doing this.
Pretty much I'm calling this spoiler section. How do we fix Alien Romulus? You know, how do you solve a problem like Romulus?
Yep.
That's how I feel, because I think because people are so mad, especially at that awful, awful deepfake nonsense, they're throwing everything out with this movie. I do think the bones, the meat of this movie, there's something there. It's just bogged down by this fan-servicey nostalgia crap. I think it could have easily be fixed. Like I said, I was with it and that's like the good first act before that Ian Holm deepfake comes in. And I was with it. I'm like, oh, I'm really liking this. For me, I would have kept the first act pretty much the same. I maybe would have extended it a little bit.
It would have been nice to get more characterization.
Especially for our secondary characters. Like one girl, I don't know her name. I don't know anything about her.
Was she the first one who got chest bursted?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I get that, with a horror thing, you usually don't know much, but I feel like you at least get a little something or some kind of like characterization. So if you don't know their name, you at least like, oh, that's the person who's like this, or they do this. You have something to grab onto.
When you think back to the first Alien movie, that's what they had. They had very distinct personalities all around. They showed a lot of them working with each other, shooting the shit, working their jobs.
Mm-hmm. Especially since this is a 2-hour movie. They had enough time to do more characterization. So I don't think it being a horror movie is an excuse, because horror movies are usually like an hour and a half. So like I get why you can't do a ton of characterization with especially secondary characters, because you don't got a lot of time. But here's a 2-hour movie. You have the time to give me a little bit more. So that's probably the main thing about the first act. Longer time with the characters. So I definitely would have taken that deep fake out. It didn't even need to be Ian Holm.
It did not need to be him whatsoever. That's the worst part about it.
It could have been a completely different android.
Huh?
It could have been Andy.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it have been cool if they flipped it over and it was another version of Andy the android?
Yep.
And he could have played 2 different roles. He could have done it. It would have been amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, this was mine. I'm like, oh yeah, wait a minute. They should we liked him so much. Give him
more.
more to do. Give him more. Have him fight with him, battle with wits with himself.
Fight with himself.
Not physically, but like this.
Yes.
And have him represent this worst side of him that, this corporate interest, how he can be reprogrammed, that sort of thing. Like, this is what you could be, to highlight the differences. That would have been great.
Yeah.
Or another actor, fine.
Something more. Just not Ian Holm. And it doesn't make sense because it's not even the same Ian Holm from Alien.
Yeah, it's not. It's a distinctly different android.
It's supposed to be like, I guess their science officer one probably looks the same.
That's what I'm guessing.
But it's even the way he...
That was the big...
So
and it confused me too, because the Rook and Alien gets like dismembered and spills everywhere, and they like take off his head and plant the thing. That's how they talk to him. But I'm pretty sure he was like blown open from the chest too. Like, he basically looked almost exactly like he does in this movie. Which almost made me think, so wait, is that supposed to be the exact same one? They just dragged his corpse over? But no, he just happened to die in the exact same way.
Yeah, I was confused at first too. I'm like, because I didn't know exactly like what was going on at that point when you first meet him. But when we find out that this is a completely different outpost that found the alien that Sigourney Weaver shot out in the first movie, it's 20 years after they find this alien. I guess they were studying this alien and they thought it was dead. It wasn't, and it fucked up shit on this outpost. And yeah, the same android died in a similar fashion. I guess because it's a science android, it has the same mindset and mission as the android, which I guess makes sense. But
yeah, sure, that's the thing. All that is fine. All of his lines, what he does, all that is totally fine. Just make him a different fucking robot.
I know. I still can't believe they did that. What a misstep.
And I think that is the turning point for most people of whether they were able to stay on board after that. And for a lot of people that...
Oh, it was jump off a cliff.
Yeah, the train derailed, went off a cliff, and crashed into a school.
Yeah.
And it was that bad.
And I get it. It's gross.
Yeah.
Nothing about it made me think, oh, this is a real person. It looked fake.
Truly a mind-boggling decision. Someone in Disney, what's the thing from Fallout? Buds, or what was that?
Oh, Buds. Sorry.
What were they called?
I think you're right, Buds. His like mentees. Yeah.
So that's like this up-and-coming executive, middle management, his like pet project that he's shopping around, right? That's what this is in Disney. Whoever is in charge of this division of resurrecting dead people as deepfakes, he's really pushing. He goes into every meeting. Hey, you sure you guys don't need us to deepfake a dead guy in this one? No? Okay, fuck. I'll try over here.
And I would believe Bud would be in charge of this project.
Exactly. That's what it feels like, because I don't understand why anyone thought this was a good idea. You brought up a good point that you found out that this was meant to be a Hulu streaming release.
Yes. So like The Prey, which is the Predator remake, went on to Hulu. Great. I'm guessing because of the success of that, Hulu probably also partnered up with them, but it sounded like it was supposed to go right to streaming, and I think it sounded like it was pretty late in the game they decided to go theatrical.
And I can see why.
It looks
the production values are off the charts.
Yeah, it looks great.
Much higher than Prey.
Yeah.
But whereas Prey had, even though it had a lower production value, had a really solid core story and kept it tight. This one kind of went off the rails, but it makes me wonder if they thought originally one of two things. Either, this is going to streaming, there'll be fewer eyes on it, we can get away with doing this deep fake. Or do you think it was a late decision that they added him and going, this is going to the big screen, we got to do something to amp it up. I know. Let's get a tie into Ian Holm from First Alien.
Wish I knew how this happened. One day we'll have the backstory.
I mean, you've already fixed like half the movie with that one casting change. Where else do you go from here? What's next?
After that, it's mainly you have to pick and choose your fan service. I don't mind some fan service. I just think it was way too much. And because it was way too much, I felt like he was a slave to it. So instead of actually doing stuff to develop the characters, the story, take it in a different direction. He's like, but I have to have this and I have to have this. How do I get here? How do I get there? How do I get to this scene with this line? And when you do that, then you're not organically letting the story go the way it should. You're trying to force it into these situations. And like I said, definitely should have cut out all of those awful lines.
Specifically, we have the android shoots an alien that was trying to attack the leading lady, which I don't remember her character's name. Rain? I remember Andy quite a bit. He should have been the main character.
Andy should have been the main character.
But anyway, so he kills the alien and he says, "Get away from her, you bitch." I did at least appreciate that you did sort of like, what am I saying? But just, you didn't need that. Cut that.
Cut it. And cut out some of like the really detailed visual stuff. Like some of the stuff, like when the alien is like coming right at her, it's like the shot like with her, with Ripley, where I thought that was a famous shot where like she's like, oh, like that, and the alien is coming at her.
Oh, when it's like has her pinned in the elevator?
Yes.
Yeah, that was a very specific one too, because that's what happens in the other movie is the alien pins her and then the facehugger is coming along. There was a lot of sequences in that elevator that were really weirdly choreographed.
Yes.
Where I didn't feel like she was in any danger because I kind of felt like the aliens were really pulling their punches. So that's whereas a lot of the other set pieces felt really, really thrilling, and they were very effective. I was gripping my seat a bit on some of them.
The ones where it felt like it wasn't as beholden to the source material.
Yeah, when he was coming up with his own stuff, it was good.
Because you are in the same world, having some visuals that look the same is fine. I felt like I was like one thing after another. And I'm like, you need to slow your roll, my dude. You can't have everything. You can't have every fan service thing in there. Because then it just feels like this movie just felt like a fan film, like a great fan film, especially the back half. I feel like the first half, I didn't feel it as much. Maybe there were some stuff and I just missed it. You need to pick and choose. And only things that are actually going to meld with your story, advance your characters. Like if it's something where it's going to hinder your story, ditch it. It's not worth it.
Yeah, you either have to, if you're going to do an homage, you either have to do it with a twist or do it just better. And a lot of the ones near the end either were just too one for one, so it wasn't doing anything different. And again, a lot of the blocking and the choreography was so awkward. It's like, this wasn't, I already saw this done better, so then this doesn't add anything.
Like the creature at the end is so ugh. I thought that was a great creature design. I really liked it. And at first, like, it was really creepy. But I think it was once she goes into the lower level, I don't know, that is where it felt...
Yeah, it got a little awkward there.
Awkward. We got our jump scare.
The original one, you had some very clear, like, physical stakes. You understood the space and what she had to do and what was happening at each point. And here, it was a little muddled sometimes, especially with the camera motion, some of the effects. It was hard to tell what was happening. And so you're left to, like, when he gets ejected in the end, like, oh, I guess he's gone now.
Because it felt like, man, especially that ending, I could feel being like, well, it has to be like Alien, but we can't have it exactly like Alien. It has to be different enough. Like I felt that through that scene, and maybe that's why I didn't like it. I felt like I could see the choices that they were making. Like, well, we have to have her walking around in her PJs and, but it can't be exactly like Sigourney Weaver with her underwear. So she'll have little cute boxer shorts and, she has to go into the suit. It has to be like slightly off.
At that point, if you're picking hairs, you just got to ditch and do something.
That should have been completely different.
Aside from the Ian Holm thing threw me, but I was back on board because I'd kind of already guessed it. And so I guess I had already mentally built up some protection there.
Prepared yourself for it.
Okay. That's done. Except, anyway, the only other solid block of time that I did really have issue with is the end when she's on the ship, just because of how closely it followed the events of First Alien.
And at that time, because it's a 2-hour movie, like the last 15 minutes, and I'm just like, we didn't need this. I feel like some rearranging could have definitely helped.
Yeah, and this comes back to doing, if we're talking about other things they need to fix, near the end, they also suddenly throw in that, oh, there's actually a bunch of aliens. Which again is like, well, in Aliens, there was a bunch of aliens, so we have to have a bunch of aliens.
I was confused by that. I'm like, where do these aliens come from?
Yeah, I mean...
Because I thought they only got this one alien. So did they come... They had,
they had all the face huggers, so presumably other ones got out that weren't in the lab that they...
Where did they get all those face huggers?
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot...
Question mark.
Yeah. And I'm fine with that not being entirely answered. I'm not a...
Yeah, but yeah, all of a sudden there's just a ton of xenomorphs.
It was like, okay, there's a ton, which is fine if it leads through naturally, but it came in really quickly and then was done pretty quickly because they all die in the elevator.
Yes.
So it was in and out pretty fast. It did set up the very cool 0G acid blood sequence.
That was probably the best sequence.
So it did set that up. The one spot that their production design failed them a little bit, I thought, was that alien tunnel, because they were trying to show the alien growth that they had encased the tunnel to flashback to aliens. But I didn't think you got to see, whereas they were really good at lighting everything else, there was something about them that looked fake. I didn't like the look of it. It was very plain. It didn't look as organic and slimy and spreading like a weed everywhere. That's the thing.
Yeah, it looked a little too clean.
Yeah, it was way too clean. Whereas when you first see it in Aliens, it's an infestation.
Yes.
Like it's growing out of control. This was an infestation. This was a renovation. The aliens renovated that hallway. It's very chic, very modern.
Very in.
Yes, all the aliens love it. That's why they're all there. It's an Airbnb for aliens. She was just disturbing their stay. They got very upset.
They're on vacay. They're on this outpost.
Yeah. She got acid everywhere. It's going to be a hell of a cleaning fee. But yeah, so that was the thing I didn't like about that hallway, which I think is the only failing from a production design standpoint in the entire movie. Again, the rest of it was very good looking. It was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very conflicting movie. There's so much that is so good about it, and I really loved. And then a couple things that really just sucker punch you, that just punish you for liking it. It's just like, why are you doing this to me? Which I think makes it, it gives you the sense of disappointment, because if it had just all been bad, you would have just written it off. But now that you got that glimpse of what it could have been, if they had just made some pretty simple changes. We talk about a lot of things that we would fix, but honestly, if the only thing they fixed was swapping Rook, Ian Holm, for someone else,
that alone would go up a letter grade.
Seriously. And I think there are many movies nowadays that you can tell retreads or do the same thing, et cetera, et cetera. So there's always those complaints out there. That's always there. And if that was the only thing wrong with the movie, I think many people would have looked past it, would have just accepted it as part of the trend. But that decision to put Ian Holm there was so jarring. It threw a lot of people out of it. And then it just puts a spotlight on all these other problems that probably would have been ignored by most people had that not been in there. Mm-hmm. It truly was the jump the shark moment.
It's
that one thing that didn't even need to be there. There is absolutely still a movie without it. It did not need to be there.
Yeah. And there's also recasting. I don't know why people are against recasting.
Can't find a lookalike.
There's got to be someone who looks like Ian Holmes out there.
Especially, not only was Rogue One bad from that perspective, since then we've had so many discussions about AI and the ethics of that, and it's really become much more in the spotlight and much more of a hot topic with the strikes. Mm-hmm. So after all that, to be like, yeah, now's the time to revisit this. Look, everybody.
Money.
Forget to your 90. You're going to be playing this to your 900.
Kind of glad I'll never be famous. I don't have to worry about anybody making an AI version of me.
Because again, I do want to stress this. There is so much good there.
It is, yeah.
My in-theater experience was great. I came out going, I think I liked that. Even with the cameo, it did not. I took it. It hit me. I was able to get past it, enjoy the rest of it. A lot of this stuff has only come up in hindsight. So, I mean, I did like it. I would probably see it again.
Okay.
Now, can we AI deepfake his deepfake out with a deepfake of someone else? Can we deepfake him?
Can we get Christopher Lee?
Yeah.
Oh no, he already passed, didn't he?
Oh shit! Now we're gonna make a deep fake of Christopher Lee.
Who's living? Who's living?
Was it Christopher Lee, or was it who's the person who replaced the other fuckface and everything?
Really thought that was Christopher Lee who did that.
Christopher Lee is Lord of the Rings Saruman.
What? Who am I thinking of then?
Thinking of the guy from Knives Out,
Yeah.
which is
Sound of Music guy. How do you solve a problem? Like aliens.
there you go. Which is
We're all bringing it back together.
such a mental block with names sometimes.
Christopher Plummer.
Christopher Plummer, the other Christopher,
For some
who is also
reason,
dead.
I literally.
So Lee and Plummer are both dead. So
yes,
right?
because
Plummer's dead,
Christopher
right?
Plummer is the one who replaced Fuckface in
I don't
All
care
the Money in the World.
How about, can we deepfake Andy? What's the actor's name again?
Ooh, David Johnson?
Yeah, can we deepfake David Johnson onto the deepfake of Ian Holm to get the movie we wanted from the beginning? Deepfake got us into this mess. Deepfake can get us out. Release the Andy cut. Any final thoughts?
I do feel like a slight hypocrite because totally got on the case of all these fan servicey type movies like Rogue One, Force Awakens, all those where you're pretty much just nostalgia. But I do think there's enough here. That's why I'm giving it a little bit of a pass. I definitely think out of all those types of movies, this to me is at least the better one out of that bunch.
Yeah, I think this is a much better movie than Rogue One.
Oh, yes.
Come for me, nerds.
Oh, Rogue One was awful.
Yeah. I think it was interesting.
They're going to come for us, Jonathan.
You had mentioned, you had mentioned the director's comments about he wanted to make a flip book of the Alien franchise.
Well, that's what he said about Evil Dead.
Right, yeah, sorry. So he had mentioned Evil Dead, but I think it's the same thing here. I think it applies to this movie.
I think it's funny that I feel like with Evil Dead is kind of similar to what he did with this. So I know some people didn't like it, but I don't feel like he got as much flack for Evil Dead being kind of a rip of those movies.
I wonder if it's because in the sci-fi realm, these popular sci-fi franchises, this has already been done so much, and therefore you have some strong emotions there.
Yeah.
The one positive thing I'll say, even with all this fan servicey stuff and a lot of stuff being the same, it's a retread, etc., when I started thinking about that comment about making a flip book and applying it to this movie, assuming that was his intention, which I think is a good assumption considering he did both of these, it is almost like, this sounds like an insult, but it is almost like, a Cliff Notes Alien franchise, which for a franchise that has been this long, with this many movies, many of which are older, that maybe modern younger audiences are not familiar with, this would probably be a pretty good introduction to the universe, the feel of everything, because the feel was great. The vibes was all the same. The aesthetics really on point. They even use a lot of puppetry and animatronics.
Yes.
Like if I'm someone, a Gen Z or something who has never seen these old movies, because we're old, this would probably be great. And I think we've already seen that ourselves where we haven't seen every installment of the franchise. So actually all that stuff was effective for us because it felt original. Now I'm still not going to credit this guy with being original. And it's an interesting take that you can have this as like this little capsule of like, hey, I'm interested in the Alien franchise. Where should I start? You'd probably recommend start at the beginning, start with Alien. But maybe if you need something a little more modern to prime you, this would be the perfect movie for that.
Well, I think besides the fan servicey stuff, I actually think my main disappointment, and I probably could have forgiven a lot more of the fan service stuff, is I felt the original stuff he was doing was sacrificed for it. Like, I feel like the story and the characters were almost cut at the knees. And that, to me, was the disappointment, because I would have been okay with some schlocky, fan servicey stuff if I had a great story that still had some, because that's where you're going to get your originalness from, is these characters and how they interact in this world. And I thought that's what I was getting in the first act. And I had some stuff in the second act. It was like up and down. And then it really dropped in the third act.
Which I think the core of the story is her and Andy.
Yes.
relationship. That's probably why the third act feels overlong and unnecessary, because he is dropped for that sequence. Because in the original, she was alone. So you have to drop him so you can have the callback, which, again, we're all circling back here and saying the same thing. But I think that is your answer then of how to fix the ending. You have to have an ending that is about that relationship.
Yes.
That doesn't discard it in favor of a callback.
And yeah, I thought we're going somewhere. And then it almost kind of resolved itself like right at the beginning of the third act. So she could be by herself.
Exactly. But aside from that, I guess I'm just saying that overall, a lot of the callbacks, I think this movie is, at least I see what he was trying to do. And I think if he had just fixed the Ian Holm deepfake,
that's the big one,
and adjusted the ending to drop the callback and be about her and Andy, it would probably have fixed 90% of the major issues with it, and it would have been.
Yeah, those are probably the two pivotal ones. Yep.
All right. Well, we've been talking a while, so we should probably wrap up.
When you see this, I already put it out on the socials, but we are moving to Wednesdays now.
Yeah, give us a little more time to edit this after our weekend movie watching.
For next week, we're going to do our part 1 of our summer recap, where we do some Fast and Furious mini reviews of movies that we've seen over the summer, the new releases. And I'm excited because Jonathan has seen about half of them, so it won't just be me talking the whole time. So I'm excited.
All right. I'll see you next week.
See you then. Bye.